SaveWithConrad.com.
Yeah, I'm Justin Ruffin from Knoxville, Tennessee. What got me to Save with Conrad was the 83 Weeks podcast. I really wasn't thinking about getting rid of any debt. I just wanted to cash out some equity in the house to do remodeling. But I did both, so that was pretty awesome. Worked out great. We redid the foyer, built pantry space, and there's little odds and ends when I first bought the house that I wanted to take care of, and we were able to take care of it. So, yeah, paid off 2 cars and some credit card debt. So probably all in all, getting $30,000 in that. And then I got some $30,000 more equity out of the house, and still plenty of equity left over. So payment's good. I lowered my interest rate. I'm in a much better spot than I was. Super easy. Everybody was great. Very, very awesome people. Francis and Steve were great to work with. They were awesome. Made it for a very easy, seamless experience. I'd probably say all in all, probably $1,000 a month at least. I lowered my interest rate, especially the way the interest rates are right now, which is, that's amazing. I'm Justin Bruckman from Knoxville, Tennessee. I saved over $1,000 with SaveWithConrad.com, and I did a lot of renovations with that money as well.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Connie, how we doing today, man? I'm pretty fired up here for another episode of My World, coming off Mother's Day weekend. Shout out to all the mothers. It's maybe a day late, but any My World listeners who are moms or play the role of mom. Maybe you're a single dad or whatever it may be. Happy belated Mother's Day. I certainly had a fantastic weekend. Did a little independent wrestling Saturday night. Joe Burns High School up in Tennessee. It's still a small little community. I played a little high school basketball up there, Connie, so got to reminisce with some folks that actually graduated the same year I did. Anyway, good old independent wrestling. We're rolling into Chicago this week. Got us a Mongo tribute. Little wrestling news here and there. Acclaim. Got some news there coming up, Conrad. I mean, you got some baseball news coming down the pike. But other than that, what do you got on your mind today on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful May morning as we record this, being Monday, May the 12th?
Our topic today is going to be Slamboree 2000. But before we get to that, we do have some big news to hit that I want to talk about that's impacted the entire wrestling world. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Before we do, it seems almost silly to even discuss, given what we're going to talk about next. But did you get a chance to see any of WWE Backlash? This is the first pay-per-view after WWE presented WrestleMania. Our first time seeing John Cena defend his championship on pay-per-view as a bad guy. Randy Orton was the hometown boy, and he was in the main event. And I've seen a lot of criticism and a little bit of praise for the show. I'm wondering what your 2 cents are, Jeff.
Well, as I just referenced, I did a little independent wrestling. We had a great fundraiser for Joe Burns' softball team. But, on the ride up, it's about an hour from the house. I've got just a tremendous focus group of one that I like to bounce things off of. And, my man Codes was watching it on his phone. But, Conrad, I just kind of say right now, he was not into it at all. And I drilled him with some questions, as I usually do. And there was just a general overall just kind of and I tried to get him hyped up. I said, well, now look, Randy Orton, this is maybe the last time, they've wrestled each other, Codes, as long as you've been alive and all that. He just wasn't there for him. No, so I don't have a ton of feedback. I know on the ride home, he showed me Pat McAfee's chest, and I just got to say, brother Pat, I love you, man, and I think you are super, super talented. But no tan, no muscle tone. Let's keep that shirt on. Let's just keep that shirt on. But no, I don't have a ton of feedback just because I worked Saturday night and wasn't online a lot yesterday. So Cody, I guess going into it, he gave it a thumbs down, and I think coming out of it, he just wasn't real thrilled with any of it. He didn't like the press conference either. He showed me that clip of R-Truth. So I think on the out, he'd give it a double thumbs down, but that's about it. So nothing earth-shattering on my end as far as a review.
It is interesting when you take a look at cagematch.net and you just try to see, hey, how many times has John Cena shared the ring with Randy Orton?
Oh,
Now,
wow.
that would include Royal Rumbles. It would include, three-way dances, four corners matches, tag matches, six-man tags, all the variations, including Survivor Series multi-man matches. But according to cagematch.net, they were in the ring together 337 times. So that's enough to get two fellas familiar with each other.
That's amazing. That's cool.
It'd be interesting to see, is that really going to be Randy Orton and John Cena's last dance? Maybe, maybe not. I guess we'll watch and see what happens next.
I got a question. How many times do you think Lawler and Dundee or Flair and Rhodes, or just kind of the rivalries back in the territory days?
I do think that's the modern equivalent, what you're laying out there.
I would have said 300 and something times. If you would have said, Jeff, how many things? I'd say 1,000, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah. That's okay.
I mean, even if you were to look at, now again, it's not to say that this is a complete list. I don't pretend to think that Cage Match has everything listed, but if you just look up the number of times that Flair shared the ring with Dusty, it was 280 times, which is less than I maybe would have imagined.
Well, I know, and we've gone into this going back, that it is not a complete list, no doubt.
Right.
No chance. So anyway, moving on with your topics.
But to your point, when it comes to a Dundee and a Lawler, 329 times they shared the ring. Gotta be more than that.
Oh, many, much more.
Let's talk a little bit about the big news over the weekend. And I hate that we're starting on a somber note, but I do think it's important to celebrate the life and memory, and more importantly, the legacy of the incredible performer, the true innovator known as Sabu. And we're going to give a cheap plug here. We're going to be doing a Remembering Sabu live roundtable as you're listening to this morning with Al Snow, Rhino, Blue Meanie, and some other special guests who knew him very well. We're going to do our best to celebrate the life and career of a true innovator and pioneer in the industry. We'll be live later today on Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on our new Podcast Heat YouTube channel. Head over right now to podcastheatwrestling.com. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you don't miss when we're live, because we will be live sharing your stories and taking your questions about a true innovator in professional wrestling. Jeff, you got to know the real man behind the character, Mr. Brunk, through the years, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts about Sabu and his career and his legacy, and what most of us listening to this never really got to know, the man behind the character, the real life Terry Brunk. The floor is yours, Double J.
Oh, wow, Conrad. In a sense that for me, third generation, I always like, what's the leaping off point here? What's the starting point here? How am I really going to put into words that a man that just in so many ways gave his life to the industry? And look, I can't think of Sabu without first thinking of his uncle, the Sheik, and the stories, and as wild and as crazy, and like one of the originators of being a true heel that protected the business. And I know it's a different generation, but at all links. But behind that man was, in the first time, my old man refers to Eddie Farhat, but the promoter in the Detroit area, and what links that generation of promoters. And he came in and worked with Lawler a few times. And, my dad, this is maybe 87. I know his first, second, or third year. Hey, Sabu and a guy named Judge Dredd are coming in, and a young man named Rob Zakowski, later known as RVD. But, we all were in those formative years in the territory. And he was such a unique cat, even then, long before, I'll call it the tables, just what the modern wrestling fan remembers him at, but his unorthodox style that I thought, all right, man, this is something really different. And you couldn't really put him into a category because he wasn't the biggest or the biggest body or all that. And, you know, the promo, not that, but just the uniqueness. And that was like kind of day one. And then as I kind of go through our careers at the same time, his ECW, I'll call it in a way that, you know, kind of the major breakout situation. And then, you know, the chuckling, oh my gosh, Sabu in WWF at the time. Now that's going to be oil and water because, you know, in the 90s, and I'm not saying this is before the Attitude Era, they had cleaned up and really gone to the new generation. And then, you know, they were in the Attitude Era and then coming out of anyway. So where I really got to know him was the early days of TNA. And that's when you understand kind of the man behind everything. And, you know, scars, not just in his forehead, but his arms. And, you know, he felt, when you were around him, you just kind of felt like, man, this guy has, damn, he's been through the ringer. But man, he worked for us at TNA off and on, really the whole run that I was there, and did it all. And man, some of the things that him and Abyss would tell stories with in the ring, and they had a good relationship. But, you know, at the end of the day, a guy that gave his life to the business, and how no such thing as coincidences, only convergences. He just had his last match in Vegas. And you know, he quote unquote went out in Sabu style. And then the dark side of the ring, his episode airs this week. And you know, knowing the stories from his uncle and then Sabu was very kayfabe. He, you know, he was born and raised and trained by a guy who, man, there's all kind of stories about the Sheik and his great lengths to go to kayfabe. But the innovator, the uniqueness, the unorthodox style, the passion that he gave to the business, the business. And look, I don't think anybody who knew him, knew his style, knew his work ethic, wouldn't say, hey, man, that was a crazy SOB. But, man, right down in his core of who he was a giver. He gave to the business. He gave everything he had. And even on a light show, he never went second or third gear. He always just had it in him. Who he was as a person was a complete giver with none of the nonsense ego. I'll say, because he protected who Sabu was for years and years and years. And to me, I respect the hell out of that. There's a lot of integrity in that. And you really wouldn't put those words with Sabu. But I'll just say the business lost a human being who trailblazed his path. And at the end of the day, isn't that all we're all trying to do? Blaze our own path and leave a legacy of, hey, man, he gave more than he took. And you can say that about Sabu.
Well said. He gave more than he took. I mean, that is sort of the big what if. You know, you and I talk about it all the time in life, in business, certainly in professional wrestling. Timing is everything. And there has to be an innovator. And I think in reality, he might actually be the preeminent daredevil in the history of pro wrestling. And I'm not arguing that Shane McMahon and Mick Foley and Jeff Hardy and New Jack and Kevin Owens and the Young Bucks and certainly Darby Allin, they all were daredevils and are daredevils to this day. But there had to be someone do it first. And I think Sabu did that. And you mentioned, you know, some of the great matches that Sabu had in TNA. I don't know that you've ever looked at this, but if you look at the match guide over on cagematch.net, you'll see that his highest ranked wrestling match, according to the readers and viewers and the fans, is Hostile City Showdown 1996. It's really Rob Van Dam's coming out party for the ECW arena, ironically on 4/20, 1996. The second most celebrated match, most revered match amongst fans, is the Monsters Ball from Bound for Glory 2005. It was a four-way with Abyss, Jeff Hardy, Rhino, and of course, the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal Sabu. And I think there's all these different versions of Sabu's career that you could go back and take a look at. and they still hold up to this day, especially understanding what you were seeing. Whether it was the idea that he was perhaps the first superstar of the tape trading era. He had a series of matches with Al Snow starting in like Lima, Ohio, that fans had to see. I mean, one of the most viral, before that was a word, tape trading things was called Sabu breaking tables or crashing tables, something like that. But it was a compilation of Sabu breaking tables where even if he didn't put his opponent through it, he would put himself through the table over and over and over. And this is, pardon, I don't mean to be this way, but it wasn't a table that was prepared the way it happens these days. He would go through over and over and over until his body weight crashed through the table. And these tables, well, they didn't know how to work. I don't know another way to say that.
Exactly.
But he goes from there to becoming, one of the key draws for Joel Goodhart's TWA, which was the precursor for Eastern Championship Wrestling, which became ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, that we all know. So independent promoters, sort of outside of the confines of mainstream wrestling, they knew that Sabu was a draw. And perhaps nobody knew that better than Paul Heyman. And they're forever linked, good or bad. But I mean, even when Bischoff was looking to make a splash on the early Nitros, Sabu was there. And then later, of course, we know he had a fabulous run with the WWF that I think, is probably not as appreciated as it could be. But then, of course, he had an incredible run with TNA. And I just think as you take a look through the evolution of his career, whether it was the crazy stunts in Japan or in some gym in Lima, Ohio, or the ECW arena, or on the big stage of WWE and even Nitro and later TNA, that guy did it all. And he never really got, maybe he will get the credit, but he never got the financial success that he probably truly earned. And I think there's a whole lot of people who are wrestling today on Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and Friday nights who borrowed a little bit along the way from Sabu. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no doubt. And I was, a lot of folks, and I'm trying to think how to word this, that just because Sabu didn't, I think him not having a promo skill set, so to speak, really took him, not rightly so, but took him kind of out of the spotlight. And when you look at a Terry Funk and his legendary career, and a lot of folks look at him, on his last leg of his career, but he was the rough Texan, but he's a world champion. His brother's a world champion. They had a different style, but Terry held Sabu in a high standard because that is who Sabu was from day one and coming up, and he just blossom and blossom. But you kind of look at, and look, whatever territory it was, and we didn't call it hardcore. We did Moondog, or even before that, just kind of bunkhouse matches and rough matches and all that. But really signifying and putting that cap on, like you said, of the tables and the legendary story of him and Mick, and Mick cutting his teeth and, hey, hit me with this bottle, and it wasn't sugar glass, and there was kind of swing after swing after swing, and just kind of guys. That's where I'm going with it. That they just, at the end of the day. And it was ingrained in him, good or bad, from his uncle, about protecting the business, giving all to the business. And from his earliest break-in days from the Sheik, Sabu carried that his entire career. And I think at the end of the day, that is the legacy that I think Sabu was given from his uncle, that, and I don't think his uncle would have this legacy, but Sabu does, about just him giving everything to his opponent, to the business. In a lot of ways, he gave everything he had to this industry.
Really and truly, I think a lot of people would argue. I mean, Taz was recently on his Instagram Live, and he said, Sabu made me. And I don't think Rob Van Dam would argue that point. And I know that Paul Heyman and ECW owes a debt of gratitude to ECW. It really is interesting to see how far reaching his impact was, even if he really wasn't ever mainstream. But I do think that's part of the allure of Sabu. Like, he is the ultimate, I wouldn't say garage band, but he wasn't the arena band. He wasn't necessarily the stadium band. But if go ahead.
And I'm sorry, but because yesterday, anyway, in the middle of the day, I ran up to the gym and did cardio. And two of my buddies were in there, and they were talking about that. And one of them said something. I'm trying to think how I said it, but I'll just say this. Can you really take Sabu out of ECW and it be the same?
No.
I mean, and I'm glad that popped back in my brain. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of guys that I think you could take out of ECW, and it would be it'd still be ECW, but taking Sabu out, I don't think it has the same legacy.
I think most people would agree that ECW by and large was built on the backs of the historical legacy and reputation of Terry Funk and the daredevil, you got to see this underground violence of Sabu. And along the way, they helped establish a whole host of other characters. Like I'm a huge Shane Douglas fan, and I thought he was a fantastic in-ring performer and a strong promo. But I do think that original three-way dance that sort of made ECW to the hardcore tape traders, they were interested in seeing Terry Funk. They were certainly interested in the novelty of a three-way dance. And we had all heard about Sabu. And Shane Douglas, don't get me wrong, was a fine performer. But with all due respect to Shane, the match probably would have drawn similarly with any other name there. Now, coming out of that, Shane was a bona fide made man, and he was the player, and he became the franchise, I think largely in part because of that match. Again, I'm not trying to take away from Shane. I'm just saying no one had seen anything like Sabu before. And the idea of how is wrestler A going to deal with this craziness, that became the story of the match. And obviously, eventually Terry Funk would position himself as middle-aged and crazy, but anybody who was there at the corner of Swanson and Rittner, and those lights came off or turned off, and then when they came back on and Sabu's there pointing up, man, you had to be there. I know it doesn't make sense, and there's a lot of ECW boo birds out there, and I get it. But I'm saying when you talk about super serving the audience, perhaps nobody in ECW did that as well or as often as Sabu.
Yeah. Interesting, man. Lost a good one.
We lost a great one. I can't wait to talk to some of his friends. We're going to be doing that, remembering Sabu. It will be live later this morning as you're listening to this at Podcast Heat Wrestling. We'll keep the conversation going. So if you're looking for more Sabu discussion, be sure to tune into that.
Conrad, a lot of folks, just because of I get all kind of feedback, they literally listen to it on Wednesdays. That's just their cadence. So this will already taken place. How can they go watch it if they're listening to this post Tuesday the 13th?
PodcastHeatWrestling.com. That'll take you right to the YouTube. That's PodcastHeatWrestling.com. By the way, before we get started, we are going to talk about Slamboree 2000, but we have some big news that is a bit of a curveball from the things we've been talking about. It's actually broken while we were recording this morning. I'll get to that in a minute.
You know what? When I see your eyes not completely kind of dialed in, I said, uh-oh, he's on the old Twitter bug. What are you looking at?
Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to remind you that making money moves should be easy, and that's why there's Cash App. It's fast, it's safe, and honestly, it's just way more personalized than the other apps out there. There's no extra hoops to jump through. There's no extra stress. All the tools are right there to help you cash in. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They look out for you. If something seems sketchy or they think that you might be sending money to a potential scammer, they're going to warn you and give you a heads up to make you think twice about that before you press send. Think of Cash App as like a personal bodyguard for your cash. And you can even spice up your payments with custom text and stamps and backgrounds, because why should paying your friend for brunch be so boring? If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, and enter the code MyWorld in your profile. And then when you send $5 to a friend, they're going to send $10 just for getting started. And that sounds too good to be true. I want to repeat that. When you go download the Cash App from your phone's app store, we want you to sign up and enter our code MyWorld in your profile. And when you send $5 to a friend, you'll get $10 just for getting started. Now, if this sounds like free money, well, buddy, for a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code and earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code MyWorld in your profile, and then send $5 to a friend. And within 14 days, you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Jeff, hypothetically, could we do that? Could I send you, say, $5, and you'll get $5 from me, but then I'm going to get $10 dropped off? Don't you wish that, like, investing in wrestling companies was that easy? Because sign me up for that.
Love it, pal. Cash App. Hey, I've already used this since we got on board. I know this is our first read, but I've already got 2 signups, pal. Used it this weekend at the picture table.
I love that. Go use the promo code MyWorld when you sign up for Cash App. Send $5 to a friend, and they give you $10. I mean, that sounds too good to be true, but they can do it for you. Go check it out. Hey, let's talk about the news that just broke. I can't believe this is real, but since we've been recording a podcast this morning, it's come out that during today's NBC upfronts, it was announced that a new WWE produced series starring Braun Strowman is going to debut on the USA Network this fall. Yeah, this happens despite Strowman's recent release from WWE. It's called Everything on the Menu with Braun Strowman. Everything on the Menu with Braun Strowman is a new food format with a big appetite. Each episode, you'll join WWE legend Braun Strowman as he eats his way across America while on the road for WWE, ordering everything on the menu and trying to down every last bite. Everything on the Menu with Braun Strowman is produced by WWE Studios and Bright North Studios. Well, first of all, let me just say I'm all for Braun Strowman staying in the WWE universe and getting a payday. But I will say, buddy, if he ever finds himself in Nashville, I say y'all go mano a mano.
Well, you would like to refer to me as just the left side of the menu.
Yes.
So he's doing everything on the menu. But hey, man, I know you've got to be thinking, I love the show, love the format, love the concept, but he was just a part of that release. So can he wrestle for other organizations and still appearing on Peacock? I guess he can. Interesting. That wouldn't you say that's an interesting development, Conrad, from a business, from a TKO Peacock relationship circumstance, or no?
I thought it was so damn interesting. I interrupted our conversation about Slamboree 2000 for it because I don't think anything like this has ever happened before, but I think it's a great thing.
Yes.
We're allowed to be able to say, hey, man, maybe there are injury reasons. I mean, we've all heard reports. I'm not going to repeat them because I don't know what's true or what's not true. But if for some reason someone's in-ring days are over with an organization, but that same organization finds a way to still work with them and put food on the table and create content and leverage that celebrity and that IP that they've already established, man, that's a win for everybody. Said differently, can you imagine your dad back in the day? Now, Bill Dundee, we think we're going to move you out of in-ring action. What we'd like to have you do is we'll pay for you to ride around and eat lunch. Now, we're going to pay you about the same. Now, you won't be wrestling. You won't be taking bumps. You're just going to go eat free meals, and we're going to have a camera there to film it. How's that sound? Where's the downside?
Yeah, that's as I'm thinking it real time through. I think there's, it's one of those things. Braun's got a loud personality, boisterous. I hope he's got a hell of an appetite. I'll give him a run for his money. But this kind of thing could really parlay him into, oh, man, Joey Chestnut, watch out. Braun Strowman's on the way.
Can you imagine if they do have it show up this July?
Yeah, I like
for a hot dog eating contest.
Yes,
it's a no-brainer.
Yes, he's got the charisma. He knows how to get the crowd. It's engagement. It's engagement.
Hypothetically, I don't want you to say it because I don't think we're doing it now. But do you remember the original lineup I sent you as a hypothetical for StarCast this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Slamboree 2000. This is an interesting time in WCW, to say the least. Let me just give you a little recap directly from the Observer. This would have come out on May 5th of 2000 in the Observer. And here's what they wrote about it. Yes, the most prestigious title in our sport changed hands twice more this week, with DDP beating Jeff Jarrett at Nitro on April 24th in Rochester, New York, and then it being put up to the winner of the fall in a tag match on Thunder on April 25th in Syracuse, New York, with David Arquette pinning Eric Bischoff. The idea, and since this just happened as we went to press time, Well, if this is correct, WCW believes the publicity about Arquette winning the title will hit mainstream and lead to a ratings boost on May 1st, since the WWF looks to be changing its world title to Rock, and Austin will appear. They did a double pin finish with Jarrett pinning Page at the same time that Arquette pinned Bischoff, but they announced Arquette as the winner and new champion and had him parade around with the belt. Kimberly was the referee and kept counting slow whenever Page had Jarrett pinned and counting fast the other way. Somehow she was out of there, and Mickey J ran in and counted the double pin and signaled that Arquette had won. Most likely on May 1st, it'll go back to Jarrett, perhaps as an executive decision or perhaps in the ring. What did you think about this idea, Jeff, when you first heard about it? Both the idea of Arquette fluking his way into the title in general, but also winning it from his tag partner in a tag team match, while said partner had to pretend that he was happy he lost the world title. Like, I think a wrestling personality once said this phrase, and maybe it applies here. That's a bridge too far, is it not?
Well, and look, as we have always said on here, creative is subjective. And this goes back, it's 25 years, correct? Like, to the point that there are so many ways to armchair quarterback this in a number of ways. And I think we always land up on kind of an option A, B, or C, all being better than actually going forward with the complete title switch. A bridge too far, yes. And I don't know where I should dive into this, but I think you could have, as Dutch would always say, we can get to the same spot by going this route. And look, Russo wanted publicity. He wanted Arquette, the movie and his appearance on Letterman and USA Today and any other mainstream he could have gotten at. If they would have essentially kind of said, David Arquette is the current holder of the WCW title while the board is reviewing the clause, and then get to another part of the show or the next episode next week and basically say the belt is held up and we're going to decide it at the pay-per-view. Having him actual champion, and we're going to get into this, I think it almost made David go from a very tough spot to an impossible spot, because then he was champion. And to the wrestling audience, a segment of the wrestling audience, that rubbed him the wrong way. Hell, it still rubs people the wrong way to this day, because there's two sides of it. But I think you could have got to the same spot if you would have just held the belt up.
I can't disagree. I wonder how big of a slippery slope you were in, though. Back then, of course, this is, you just jumped in October. Here we are, we'll call it 6 months later, and you're figured in the top spot. You're in the title picture. I mean, this is, the highest spots on the card you've held from a mainstream national audience. I mean, certainly you may have entered every territory, but I mean, as far as the WWF and WCW, you being in the title picture is exactly what every wrestling performer would want. And I know that Russo is the guy who's really advocating for you here, and you had a great relationship with him that gave you more confidence about your career prospects than perhaps you thought you would enjoy with Jim Ross and Vince McMahon. But when you see some of the creative here, are you in a weird spot where you feel like you can't raise your hand and say, are we sure about that?
Well, we can isolate this because it really is a microcosm. But if you really look back from the day I arrived and the political nature, it just goes without saying that what a blueprint on how not to run creative. Because, and I don't, just because it's the top, Hogan, Hall, Nash, Lex, Sting, and I'm going to forget a few others, and then the New Blood, and then Savage is in there. So many different folks that at this stage of their career and the money coming in, and it was most importantly in this whole mindset is they were guaranteed contracts that you didn't have to do what you were asked to do at all. You were going to get paid regardless. We'll call it the total annihilation, ass whooping, the vibe, the morale, because on the other side of the fence that I had just left, knowing, Austin and just Mick and Rock and DX and the Attitude Era, they were just, everything was rolling over there. So it was a clear cut by this time, May of 2000, Conrad. It was just a clear cut WWE number 1, WCW number 2. They lost the slot. There was maybe an ebb and flow there for a time. Now Russo comes in. I think I get this right. He had already been sent home. Now he's back. Hey, Eric and Russo, y'all got to work together. Okay, that's kind of a ticking time bomb. Let's try to do this. It's still on a week-to-week basis. And that's another thing, Conrad, that is so damn hard. And I've been in the middle of all kinds of stuff like this as a talent, as a producer, helping things out. I've seen my old man back to the territory days, one angle after another, may not pop. Then he just literally takes his yellow colander pad, rips everything up. I'm going to forget what I had the next, month or two or however far in advance. He said, to start over. So Shivani, and you'll probably recall this even better, but this was far from a well thought out plan. It was a week to week basis. And so, yes, Conrad, I was there. I was loving the money that I was making. I knew where I had just come from, that I was about as hot a heel as the WWF had in October of 99. So we'll call it September of 99, a hot heel. And I knew where the political climate, I'm not going to point fingers just at Ross, because he was trying to keep his top star happy and everything that goes with all that kind of stuff. I knew that I didn't use the words grateful, but I was thankful to be there and in this opportunity, but knew in my gut of guts that this ain't going to get us where we hope it is, because there's just too much. And this is the term I always used, man, we're hot shotting a lot. I mean, when you start hot shotting a lot, it no longer becomes a hot shot. It's just it's just there.
Let's talk just a minute, because I'm going to put you on the not a hot shot, but the hot seat, because the Observer had this to say. Bret Hart was asked by Sting before the stunt on April 17th if he had a problem with Sting coming down from the ceiling. Bret said he didn't have a problem with it if Sting didn't have a problem and felt safe doing so and had a safety line. But there were people in the company who felt it was in poor taste. But Russo was insistent that it was important to do it. Now, you're uniquely qualified to have an opinion here, because you're one of the first guys in the ring after Owen had his stunt. We know we know your family relationship with his family, and I mean, he's one of your best friends and a tag team partner. And I mean, you were a big part of Owen's life. Not to say that Bret isn't, of course, but here Russo is advocating that this stunt has to happen. And I know Russo's also your pal, but he's also the guy giving you a push. Did you think this was okay? And if not, did you feel like, I probably shouldn't say anything? It doesn't do me any favors politically if I do. It feels like you're in a really tough spot here, Jeff.
And you're specifically talking about Sting rappelling down.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll paraphrase. Hey, Vince, is Sting okay with this? Yep. Okay. And it was me I wasn't going to get in the way of creative or Russo. It wasn't my role, but I damn sure wasn't going to object if the guy who's actually taking the risk was cool with it. It was that kind of told me, whether it's my upbringing or whatever it may be, I'm not in a position to tell Sting, the legacy, even at that time, he was the tip top guy in WCW. Hogan, yes, pay wise, but Sting had been there through it all. I wasn't going to get in the way of his decision making situation.
Great answer. Now let me give you a twist. Let's say, for instance, you've got this same cast of characters, because again, you and Vince Russo and Sting worked together in TNA. But at the time in WCW, you're, no disrespect, but quote unquote, just a talent. Now you're the boss in TNA. You have some power, some authority, some decision-making ability. If Russo pitched this idea to you just 1 year, 11 months after, and it's already TNA, but you're the boss, would you have approved Sting rappelling down, or would you have said, hey, Vince, I appreciate you feel strongly about it, but we're not doing it?
I'd been the Dutch Mantel. I'm just follow up that. No, we can get to another spot. There's more downside than upside. It'd been that simple. No, I'd have said no. If you're just talking a year removed, I feel in my heart of hearts, I'd have said, Vince, I get it. I totally understand it, but I'm going to challenge you because this is a creative room. And by that word creative, that means we're supposed to get creative in our thought processes. I'll challenge you to come up with maybe not only one more idea, but 3 or 4 ideas, and let's let the room vote on it and beat up different ideas and make them better. I did that many times on stunts, on angles, on promos, on outshots, on you name it. I think that is, you know, as I've aged and look at wisdom, I think that is such an important part of I'll say leading a creative process is to challenge folks. Hey, let's come up with a couple other options. Not saying we're not doing your option, but the real process here is let's get collaborative and creative, and somebody come up with something, and somebody else in the room is going to take an idea and make it better. And then you never know, there may be another somebody in the room. You know, we used to have Bill Banks out to the house in creative process. He wasn't there all the time, but you know, Vince, Dutch, Rudy was the assistant that kept the train on the tracks. Abyss would come from time to time. There's, you know, Mike Tenay. We would Matt Conway. We would have that room going all this. And I'm just giving you Jeremy Borash. I would just give you for an example that, you know, every now and then, and Bill would be doing his day job, social media and YouTube in those early days. All of a sudden, he'd say, "Hey, Jeff," and he'd call me downstairs. There's a bar, by a kitchen, and behind a bar, and they were over in the meeting room. He'd say, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" And I'd go, "Shit, go tell the room." But I think there's a lot of success that can come out of that. I got on a little soapbox, little tangent, Conrad, but no, I would have said, let's come up with other ideas.
You just didn't feel like it was your place to say that as a talent?
Yeah. I mean, again, out of respect for the process, that's 2. Number 1, out of respect for Sting.
Well, listen, I don't think there's ever a problem prioritizing safety, and that's what Stopbox USA is all about. I mean, let's be real. Owning a handgun for self-defense comes with serious responsibility. You need it secure, but you also need it accessible when it matters most. And too often that means choosing between locking it away or leaving it out, which is vulnerable to kids, guests, or intruders. And that's the problem that Stopbox USA set out to solve. And I think they nailed it with the Stopbox Pro. It's 100% mechanical, keyless, battery-free lockbox that gives you instant controlled access to your firearm. Again, there's no electronics, there's no keys, and there's no codes required. It's just a patented 5-button locking system that responds to your unique input. It's fast, intuitive, and built for muscle memory, so you're not thinking, you're reacting. And when seconds matter, well, that makes all the difference. With the Stopbox Pro, you don't have to trade safety for speed or peace of mind for readiness. Your firearm stays secure, but always within reach. And our listeners are getting 10% off your entire order when you use the code MyWorld. They're also giving you a buy one, get one free in their Stopbox Pro. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use the code MyWorld at StopboxUSA.com. All the Stopbox products are made right here in the USA in their own facility. Not only does this ensure the highest quality craftsmanship of every product sent out, it also creates meaningful jobs and opportunities for the American workers. And did I mention that the Stopbox Pro is TSA compliant? Once again, for a limited time only, our listeners are getting this crazy deal, about 10% off of your entire order when you use our promo code MyWorld. And right now, Stopbox is also running a deal on their most popular bundle, the 2-pack, which saves you over 30%. And it comes with free accessories and shipping. That's 10% off and a big bundle discount when you use the code MyWorld at StopboxUSA.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. Jeff, we've got some more breaking news. I
Get
don't know why this keeps happening when we're recording, but Mondays are busy. Check out the new report that we've got here.
There we go.
WWE. This is a report directly from PW Insider, and it's recapped to say WWE is potentially looking at the weekend of July 12th in Atlanta for Evolution 2, timed with a Saturday night's main event taping the same weekend. Jeff, are you familiar with any other big wrestling events happening on Saturday, July 12th? Maybe at Globe Life Field in Arlington.
Conrad, can you put that graphic up again, Silva? I'm just like, this just came out, right?
Yeah, just now. So not only has WWE counter-programmed AEW's first ever stadium show here in America with a free Saturday night's main event both on NBC and Peacock, but as if that wasn't enough, now they're going to be doing Evolution 2 in Atlanta. They're going to be celebrating women's wrestling
On Saturday afternoon.
The information is what we have right there. It's the weekend of July 12th. It's all in weekend where we know in Dallas, Texas, AEW has a Wednesday live show for Dynamite, a Thursday live show for Collision, a Friday night Ring of Honor pay-per-view, and it was a Saturday night pay-per-view, their first ever stadium show. I think AEW reacted to the response of the Saturday night's main event occurrence. I'm sure it was just a silly coincidence. And they moved it to an afternoon start time. And now WWE continues to put the boots to AEW. Oh, we're going to bring back the women's show that we haven't done in freaking years.
In years. And is Saturday night main event in Tampa?
I don't know.
Okay. I was just trying to, that's another weekend. Anyway. Okay. Wow. The wrestling war continues. And that makes everyone better.
WWE Evolution, if you're wondering, happened October 2018. So nearly 7 years removed. And it just happens to be on the same weekend. What do you think of that?
That's what I'm saying is the wrestling war continues. It is, when you look, I had this conversation Friday night, I think, Conrad, with a family member. And when you really drill down and look at TKO and UFC and IMG on location and their back end, at the end of the day, all that really matters to those folks is the bottom line. And I understand that completely, but boy, oh boy, that makes the the knives, the machetes get sharper and sharper and sharper. Very interesting as it drilled. I'll process this the rest of the afternoon, but wow.
Just so you know, they have not officially announced Saturday night's main event location, but everyone expects it to be in Atlanta.
Well, now, yeah, that's why I thought Tampa's another week.
Tampa is coming up with Logan Paul and Jey Uso.
I got it. Yeah. So yeah,
that's later this month.
So yeah, July will be it. They'll double it up. Atlanta.
Yeah, it's the only thing that makes sense. But I find it interesting that, boy, we're dusting off a 7-year-old brand, something that we didn't think would come back. And it does make me wonder, over the weekend. And again, I don't know. Let me go grab my tinfoil hat. But I saw Mercedes Moné doing promos talking about her dream being to be the main event All In, and that's why she's here. She wants to main event the first stadium show. If that really is the direction they're going, and again, I have no inside information. I don't work for AEW, and I don't know what's going to happen. However, if they were really planning to let the ladies close the first stadium show, I can only assume if that really is the creative, if WWE got wind of that and they thought there'd be any pushback about women's wrestling being a bigger priority somewhere else, what better way to counteract that than to say, you know what? We'll give them their own pay-per-view again. It's JCP WWF all over again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the wrestling war is real.
Oh goodness. Well, let's talk more about 2000. Let's see if we can draw any parallels. Here's what's written in the Observer here. Billy Kidman, Juventud Guerrero, and Kid Romeo from WCW will highlight the lineup for New Japan's annual Best of the Super Junior tournament, which starts on May 19th at the Tokyo Korakuen Hall and ends on June 9th at the Osaka Gymnasium. This year's tournament will be broken up into 2 7-member blocks, although exactly who is bracketed where hasn't been announced. This is topical, though, because Nick Wayne and Kevin Knight are representing AEW in this year's tournament. As you may recall, only Kid Romeo wound up representing WCW. Kidman and Juventud essentially got replaced in this tournament by 2 Japanese independent wrestlers. Do you recall any chatter or conversation in 2000 about the New Japan WCW relationship? It doesn't seem nearly as strong in, say, 2000 as it was 4 or 5 years prior.
Yes. And look, the world is goes without saying, Conrad, we both talk about it every day. Look, in 2000, there was no social media. So if you were going to get, it would be, I guess you could say, somewhat in the sheets, would be the news. But when I read this in the research, I'm like, I don't even recall Kidman being an option to go in to Japan. And at this time, he was involved with Hogan in a weekly program and, Nitro and Thunder and everything that went with that. I just like, hey, that's news to me. And so to answer your question, the Japan WCW relationship felt to me way in the back seat, but not because there was it just wasn't a priority under any set of circumstances because of, I'll call it, the dogfight that was going on between, WWF and WCW at the time.
Let's talk about some other news and notes from the newsletters in this era. I guess I should give this sidebar. For years, Russo and his supporters have long claimed the Arquette stunt was worth it, and it was a good idea because it got him on the front page of the USA Today. But it really didn't. It actually got him a small blurb and a sidebar on the first page of Section D, more than like 50 pages deep into the newspaper. And I get that we're splitting hairs here. I mean, what Russo is saying, the spirit of, hey, it got us coverage in the USA Today, we didn't have to pay for it. Well, that's true. And I can't help but feel like I don't really want to take Russo to task for that, because if you and I both think the world of Ricky Morton, we had a private conversation before we clicked record today. And if you were to ask him about 1985 or 86 or 87, he'd tell you that every building was sold out and they were hanging from the rafters and the fire marshal was involved. And it's just the way people tell wrestling stories. So I don't really get too caught up in that. But do you think it was worth it? And what do you make of people trying to take Russo to task of saying, well, it technically wasn't the front page of the USA Today. It was several pages deep, but it was in the USA Today. Was it worth it, Jeff?
Him becoming full-blown champion, I don't. I would, I guess you could say, argue the point, obviously in a subjective manner, in that you wanted to get, so, is it worth it? I think you got to get out the balance sheet. Did your hardcore fans get turned off from it? Yeah, they did, I believe. Russo's argument, he'll get up on the stand and say, they're going to be there, rain, show, sleet, shine. It doesn't matter. Okay, that's assuming that your base will be there forever. That's not true. I don't believe, and you could really get into a soapbox discussion and go back and look at multiple territories. The substitutions killed the Von Erich territory. They were doing, 3,000 people for a spot show, and Kevin and Kerry did enough no-shows that all of a sudden there's 200 people. So you can kill a base. That's a myth that the hardcores will always be there. That's not true. You could have gotten to the same spot. And we were talking about a little fine note here that reflects that is connected to me, that Arquette was on the David Letterman show. And in 2000, the David Letterman show it was Conrad, that's for the complete flood of, obviously no streaming, but cable television was entering into that golden era, that it was, it was big, but network TV is still strong. And he mentioned old Last Outlaw, Conrad. I wish we had a clip of that David said, "Oh, you're champion." Well, really, who'd you beat? And he said, "Well, Jeff Jarrett," or something like that. But no. So was it really worth it? I think going back to my kind of discussion, pros and cons, I think the cons outweigh the pros in that, ratings didn't have that big a jump. Buy rates, I don't think they merchandise it with any T-shirts or any of that kind of stuff. And so from a revenue point of view, you didn't really see a return on it. So, okay, then let's look at the intangibles and really drill down in, did the brand get strengthened by it? Did we find any outside audience that may go, "Oh, that's cool. I haven't watched WCW in a while, and so they're bringing the lapsed fan back," or did it create any new fans? We could go all down the list. Conrad, I think when you sit before a judge in Rustler's court, he would say, "Your Honor, I'm going to have to rule with there's more, cons than pros." So to answer your question, I don't think it was worth it.
We know that they're immediately going to do a Nitro in Birmingham. I can't believe this is real, but Birmingham for Nitro only had a $77,000 gate. But we do get cameo appearances from Courtney Cox and Kurt Russell. It was a pre-tape, but still, it counts for something. I mean, she's a huge star for Friends, and we know that you can tell based on the necklace and the sideburns there. Kurt Russell's participating in an Elvis-themed movie. Still, maybe that's a sign. Maybe this is a little Memphis wrestling here. Speaking of Memphis, that's where they are on May 2nd. They're doing a Thunder taping from Memphis. And this is a pretty famous story here, Jeff, where there was a big finish that was pretty screwed up. And you know exactly what I'm talking about with the stage and the stunt that went wrong. We've never heard this word for word from your mouth. Tell us what was supposed to happen and how you guys had to improvise and ultimately what did happen.
Conrad, I don't know if you remember this, but when we did this episode and kind of drilled down on it, I was like, "Oh yeah, there was a stunt gone wrong," but this is a perfect example of having your shit together. And I'm saying that in this set of circumstances, I think I was supposed to climb a tower and Paige was going to knock me off and go through it. And I think not one, but two people ended up inadvertently falling through this prior to the stunt. And then Paige is like, "No, we got to do it." And I'm like, "The hell, the damn thing is exposed, Dallas. Like, what are we doing?" The camera shot it. People have gone through it. There is no, and I think he called an audible and he went through it. But Conrad, I may be screwing this entire story because when we did this episode, however long back that was, I was just like, I don't remember what was supposed to happen and what didn't happen. What I do remember for sure is no, and I don't say rehearsals. I always hate that term, but no production. Talk to creative, talk to talent. And when you have, how many people were in this? 50? I think there was, I don't know, 30, 40. There was a lot of talent in there and they didn't give them the heads up. This is kind of a classic example of lack of leadership across the board, because when you have something like this, you damn better make sure everybody's on board. If not, something like this happened. Not one, but two people fell in this, correct?
So let's run through it. The big finish was totally screwed up. The idea was that Jarrett and Paige were to climb a scaffolding. The idea is that Arquette would climb the scaffolding, hit either Jarrett or Paige, and it would make sense to be Jarrett. And that is who I was told it was supposed to be with the guitar. He would then take the bump and the gimmick part of the stage that they would fall through, similar to Mick Foley's bump at No Way Out and Crowbar's bump that nobody remembers into the gymnastics pad. When leaving the ring by accident, Asia stepped on the set and fell through, so everyone could see it was gimmicked. Arquette then ran out and apparently wasn't given directions as to what to avoid, so he stepped and fell into the gimmicked part of the stage. So Jarrett and Paige improvised up there, with Paige deciding to save the show and take the bump into what was already evident as a gimmicked hole in the stage. No idea at press time as to how this will be edited to attempt to make the save on television. So everybody's doing their best to sort of salvage this with the editing, but for some reason, when it comes to a bunch of episodes of Thunder from 2000, what's on WWE Network and Peacock is not what aired on TBS. So it looks like whatever was done live to tape that night was shot. So if you want to see exactly how this was screwed up, you can do so by going and watching the official streaming version, which I think is hilarious. But this is maybe exhibit A of why things were in the condition and shape they were. It was, I mean, I remember when you and I first started working together in real life as we're starting this podcast and the whole team comes together. I feel like you were preaching from past experience. Hey guys, we should all over communicate. There was a lack of communication here that led to Asia falling through, Arquette falling through. And now we're live to tape asking guys to, hey, just go figure it out. This is, and by the way, I think this is Macho Man's last appearance for WCW. There's just so much where it's like, this could have been so much bigger and better. We just had about 97% of the idea, and the last 3 killed it.
97? Conrad, this is the main event.
Yes.
A primetime show that was not discussed remotely with people that were going to be appearing on camera. And, it's just wrestling. Well, that's my point. What can go wrong will go wrong. 50 wrestlers or 30. I know I'm getting that wrong, but it was a big ass battle royal with a lot of folks and a lot of moving parts and people all over the place. And but again, it's kind of, it's back to the microcosm. And here's something that I wanted to point out, that we're talking about this, and Conrad, we joke about kind of TNA LOL, and they've pushed through all that. And you have, a lot of folks remember WCW LOL. Well, and I kind of get this, but you talked about a $77,000 house, but how many people was that paid? I think that's in the notes. And but it just kind of goes to show that, look, this is, yes, it was down, but I want to say Birmingham was 3,000 or 4,000 paid.
Yeah, Birmingham's way down. Birmingham had 3,635 paid, which is the 77,000 I referenced.
But still, 3,600. That ain't, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze. I mean, that's almost 4,000 people show up. Is it Attitude Era? 12,000 sold out, hanging from the rafters? No, but 4,000 or 3,500 paid. It's not. It's
Jeff.
Yeah,
respectfully, it's fucking disastrous.
You think
because we've got here's the thing. Let's just talk. Let's pretend we're not talking about wrestling anymore.
Okay.
Let's pretend we've got a guy who's making $1 million a year. He's got life like he likes it. And now all of a sudden he loses his job. Thankfully, he's not unemployed very long, and he finds a new gig, and he's making $250,000 a year. Now, all of us would say, well, shit, $250,000 a year. He's doing pretty well. And that makes sense to everybody except the person who had $1 million a year lifestyle.
Bingo. Okay.
And at that point, it's an unmitigated disaster. He can't pay his bills. And that's where WCW was.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. No shit.
WCW was operating based on making, and this is a poor example, $1 million a year. And now they're doing it. I mean, as a reminder, they did TV there the prior July. They did a Thunder taping in July. And I don't know what the paid was, but I'd bet it was no less than double, perhaps triple.
Well, remember that stat that we showed in Chapel Hill?
Yes.
That I'll never forget reading that research and going, man, right there, Jarrett would go, hey guys, do we need any proof that what we're doing is not working? Oh, good God.
By the way, as a reminder, they ran Thunder in February of '98 in Birmingham at the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center, the BJCC, the same building,
as we call it. Sold
out, hanging from the rafters in '98. Can't get another person in the building. And 2 years later, we're trying to convince ourselves in a circle jerk fashion, well, 3,600 ain't bad. And if you were an independent, that's fucking on the money. That's exactly right. But when there's an expectation and a business and an outlay, an investment, where we've got to hit a certain number just to break even. Ooh, we're a long way from there.
And
3,600.
I'll leave names out of this. But talking to a music buddy of mine who deals with a lot of tours and a lot of music across all genres. And, this is the time of year where tours they're more than on sale. They're going. And Conrad, it is like, yep, some of these folks are getting the call. I'm like, elaborate on that. Yeah, getting the call. Well, what's that? Well, that guarantee that we had for you for 30 shows at whatever, 200 grand a show or whatever. We're going to recalculate that. You've got a great option. We're going to bump you in half of that, or we can cancel it. It's totally up to you, Conrad. There's some folks that put out music that are based on yesteryear, and everything is so competitive that some folks get that call and got to pivot. So yeah, that's the live event business for you for sure.
I do want to ask you about a little thing because the little things add up. I remember hearing conversations when the NWO was first getting hot in 96. We've heard this story from Eric and Hogan and Hall and Nash that when the NWO first started to get hot, it wouldn't make sense if they were truly invading the building and they're invading WCW, that you could go to the WCW merch stand and sell t-shirts. So to make that more plausible, they started setting up quote unquote bootleggers that weren't really bootleggers on the outside of the arena to sell those NWO shirts. Now we can drop that charade once it's really established in 97, but in 96, when we're first starting the angle, I think that makes sense. Now I know that everybody by 1996 knew what wrestling was, but if we want to have some authenticity and we want to suspend disbelief and we want to get people invested, it's a little thing that could make all the difference in the world to really sell and cement that, oh, I don't know what's really going on here. I'm asking you about this because it's reported in the Torch. Kimberly and Dallas Page still travel together, so they aren't selling their breakup angle in real life. Now, on the surface, I want to say, yeah, no shit, Wade, that'd be stupid. But then I think to myself, well, hang on. When they got to town, just before they pull up to the back of the arena, where we know there's going to be fans lined up along the fence line, they could have had Kimberly jump in the car with somebody else, or vice versa. Dallas could have jumped in the car with somebody else, but they didn't take that extra step. Do you think these extra little attention to detail points really matter in pro wrestling in 2025, or was that passe even in 2000?
Well, it's subjective, and I think you could make an argument for both ways, but I will say this, because what makes wrestling so special? Like, why it's this unique form. And when you try to, tell me about professional wrestling. Well, it's almost like, hey, how does fried chicken taste? Can you put it into words? Well, it's good. Well, what's it taste like? I think wrestling is so unique and so different. And to go back to rock, oh, everything's a work. No, it's not. I mean, because I'm going to be all over the place. Oh, what's Kevin Nash? Oh, the only thing to shoot this is the miles and the money. Well, guess what? Then okay, that is real. So, and I don't think this is strictly coming from a third generation guy, but it is a little bit of Hollywood. So the big box office attraction and the feature film and on the big screen, a little bit of television, whether it's whatever your favorite show is, Succession or Friends or Big Bang Theory or whatever kind of sitcom. But we've also got a little Broadway over here, you got a little bit of a stand-up comedy over here. Okay, then you really have, okay, what kind of sport can we throw in there? And you can throw in all kind of different things in there. Oh, wait, politics is hot. So we're going to kind of touch on that. It's wrestling to me. You can throw all of it in there in this big barrel and stir it up and stir it up and stir it up. And what comes out of all this? Well, it's professional wrestling that's 52 weeks a year that you can create, whether it's 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours a week, which is that doesn't happen. It is so unique and so different in that's where I go down to really do this right. And don't get me on my soapbox about social media that on this same account, they'll post about their ham sandwiches and crying because some airline canceled their flight and this on that. Then the next post the guy puts out, he wants you to dial into his character. It's like, oh, dude, you're sending so many mixed messages. So Conrad, I am rambling today. I have no idea if that made sense, but I am a stickler for, yes, the little things matter. I still firmly believe the little things matter and always will, because I believe it's what makes us different.
Jeff, I can't believe this is real, but for the third time, I've got more breaking news for us to talk about. But first, I want to remind everybody how Jeff is getting his ding dong real hard these days. He's on the gas. Stand up and show him, Jeff. Pull your britches down. Just show him what BlueChew Max can do. It combines the active ingredients in Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. Think of it as like a hot tag for your wiener. And I actually heard from a Hall of Famer over the weekend who said, "Hey, Conrad, what's the promo code? I'm in dire need." Everybody knows when you're looking for that hot tag, look no further than BlueChew Max, because you can be ready whenever she or he needs it. And now you can even get your first month of BlueChew free. Great sex is just a few clicks away. You just sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. And that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of BlueChew free when you use the promo code MyWorld. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code MyWorld. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast. Jeff, are you ready for this?
Conrad, I'm busy too. My phone's blown up, but I don't think. Go. What do you got? Because I guarantee you what you're about to say is not about my text.
Is it about Michael Jordan?
Oh, no.
Michael Jordan's back. The NBA on NBC is coming back next year. He will be a special contributor. This will be the first time he's back in the spotlight talking basketball on a major platform. They've also announced they've signed game analyst Reggie Miller and studio analyst Carmelo Anthony. It's an all-star crew, but the idea that Michael Jordan is back talking basketball on NBC and Peacock, boy, that's a feather in the cap for Peacock and NBC Universal, is it not?
Last night late, I found myself drinking my protein shake before I go to bed. I was watching Charles and Kenny. Shaq wasn't on last night. Jalen Rose set in, but just kind of watching Kenny, Charles, just watching that show. And, it was a blowout, the games. Anyway, they were recapping and having fun. Charles talking about hockey and all that. In that, they're just very, very good at what they do. And so NBC bringing back the old theme, like they better do something. But boy, oh boy, getting Jordan, what kind of checkbook did they have to get his ass there? He's got to obviously want to do it. He don't need no more money. He doesn't need, my gosh, that in the sports world, that's huge. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask you, Conrad, and I don't do it often enough like I should. What's your thoughts? And I know you're not the basketball. I'm shocked. I am. And hats off. And it will get ratings. And it's the only way, oh man, to compete with Charles and you just can't. Those guys are legacy players that have more rapport, and not just the generation they played in, but they just developed that. It's just a massive, massive show that is, their cure ratings as high as you can get in American sports. They're fantastic. So how does NBC compete? Oh man, you go get Michael Jordan, and they're all buddies. And I'm sure Jordan's agent said, yeah, we'll take what they get combined. Good God. What's your thoughts?
I think it's huge. I think it's it's funny because we were just talking about the promotional war that's happening right now. even though nobody's calling it that, between WWE and AEW. It does feel like, the Shaq and Charles Barkley crew are now pitted against Michael freaking Jordan. Now, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm like you. I thought he was one of those guys who's content. Hey, I'll just make my $1 billion a year off the shoes or whatever it is and sit at home and go win some fishing tournaments and fly around on my jet and my boat, my yacht that both look like Jordan shoes. I mean, the dude's got the most charmed life of all. The idea that he's now going to be dictated to, perhaps for the first time in decades. Hey, we need you here at so-and-so time. It is a total about face. I think his, I don't know, reclusion, the way he's pulled back from the mainstream media is why we all gravitated to The Last Dance. Well, that coupled with the whole pandemic, but we haven't heard from Michael Jordan about these things. And now the idea that we're going to get his opinion about today's game. I mean, there's been the debate that's been going for years now about LeBron or Jordan. Jordan's going to have an opportunity to talk about LeBron's play publicly for the first time. It's going to be a fun season next season.
I mean, just that's, hey, Michael, over the last blah, 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 do you think LeBron, well, I don't want to say that. Who do you think over the last 10 years, not scored the most, not this, not that, who do you think's put out the most effort? And he is going to, I can't passive. Will he be passive aggressive and just bury LeBron? I don't know, because Jordan was as good a defensive player as good an offensive player. So I love my basketball, and the haters are going to be out there, but I don't think there's any comparison in the two. Yeah. So
I saw a clip the other day on social. I didn't take the extra step to vet it. So I'm going to ask you one more nerdy basketball question, and then we'll talk about the actual pay-per-view Slamboree 2000. I saw a talking head on social media say it's only happened 4 times in the history of the NBA where a player would win the scoring title and the defensive player of the year and the regular season MVP and the finals MVP. It's only happened 4 times. And the players who did it were Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan. Is that factual?
Yes. And you're missing, I think there's 5 accolades: offensive, defensive.
First team defense is what it was.
First team defense. I think, it's MVP, most regular season, scoring title. I don't know, but yes, when I mean, and look, I'm the guy that, when I really got to go into a long series of cardio, Conrad, I'll put on my YouTube kind of algorithm of NBA, of Larry Bird stories and Michael Jordan stories and all this. But the Steph Curry doesn't get enough credit because he's the first video game true player that could shoot it anywhere. But in the 90s, the physicality that came along with the game, and rightfully so, they got to protect, just like the NFL, you got to protect your players. It was so much more physical in the 90s. And Charles, he always says it in a Charles way. If you would have let Michael Jordan play in today's game, he'd have had as many points as he wanted to have, because he was too strong and too fast and could get to the hole. And he could hit his free throws. He would be unstoppable in today's game. And look, I know I'm biased and all that, but yes, Michael Jordan is the only guy to do that stat. And it's pretty amazing when you see that compared to Kobe, LeBron, and others, that you want to say, oh no, this guy's the GOAT, this guy's the GOAT. When you just get stats on the table and stats only, you just go, come on, guys. There is zero discussion. Zero.
How about a little more discussion about evolution? We're talking about it in real time here. There's more context to the announcement we've heard about the all women's PLE. It's going to happen on the 13th. So it'll be the day after Saturday night's main event.
There you go.
There's the information. And Jeff, I sent you a hilarious photo of an AEW talent that we are not going to post here because, YouTube will cancel us. But the photo will make you smile or laugh. But I can't wait to get a one shot of your response. Look at this. How's that for effective use of social media in 2025 that you didn't expect, Jeff? I just want it on record right now. That person has 139,000 followers today. I bet it's a little more than that this time next week. Just a guess.
As we say in the South, Connie,
Bless her heart.
bless her heart. Mercy.
Mercy indeed. Let's talk about Slamboree. We're finally here. The show draws 7,165 fans, which I know what you're thinking. Hey, that ain't that bad. Well, only 4,862 were paying fans, which again, if this were ECW, we'd be like, man, that might be a record for them. Way to go. $139,202 was the gate, which makes it a substantial money loser. The show was on track to do 6,000 paid. And according to Dave Meltzer, the tickets didn't just stall when David Arquette won the world title. They stopped completely, which is quite a testament to whether or not this was a good idea or not. Let's get to the actual matches. The first one is an interesting one. We've got Chris Candido, who we both think a lot of, retaining his cruiserweight title over the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea. It gets 2 stars. And of course, as you may imagine, we're going to see Paisley shove Tammy down, and Candido's going to get a low blow, and he's going to pull Tammy's dress off. It was like a see-through thingy. And it's written here that Tammy was wearing more clothing than any women in pro wrestling history that had their dress torn off. 2 stars. Interesting to see Tammy and Chris in WCW in 2000.
Yeah.
I don't think Chris was necessarily at his best when he was in WCW, but how do you think he did as a cruiserweight champion? Is it another case of timing? Because I have to admit, I would have loved to have seen him in WCW in 96, mixing it up with the Benoits and the Malenkos and the Eddie Guerreros and the Chris Jerichos. I think that could have been really compelling. He was fresh off of the whole Body Donna's run. We know was headed to ECW. But in an alternate universe, if he would have landed in WCW in late 96, early 97, I think his career looks a whole lot differently. What do you think?
I do, Conrad. We were talking earlier, and I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying on general, I'll call it the evaluation of talent. Chris had a uniqueness to him that permeated over time, and given the opportunity, I'm going to say, like all talent, but a produced Chris on the mic with the direction, I think you're spot on. I think his career would have looked in a lot of ways radically different, because he could, and I don't say just be a base, but he would have been really good opponents to the Lucha guys, as well as, Kidman and some other guys that really broke out of that. So yes, I do think his career will look different. Timing's everything.
Let's talk about the next match. We've got Terry Funk, another hardcore legend, winning a handicap match for the hardcore title over Norman Smiley and Ralphus in 10 minutes and 3 seconds. I think Silva's got a better shot of Ralphus. There you go. This is what it would look like if we got Cassio Kid inside an AEW ring. Do you think we could make that happen over All Out Weekend? Like a pre-show type, maybe a Ring of Honor deal. Do you think we could get Cassio Kid taking some finishes? I mean, you could hit him with a guitar. You've done that before, right?
I would love to, but look, this shot right here, and keep it up, Dave, that Terry Funk, one of the most legendary families. His father was a territory promoter. His brother was a multi-time world heavyweight champion. He is a world heavyweight champion. Over in Japan, just traveled the world, very well respected. He's getting wiggled by, I love good old Norman Smiley, but Conrad Ralphus is in the ring with Terry Funk, and Ralphus' current job in this photo, he is moonlighting. He is part-timing. He's just kind of having some fun as Ralphus the wrestler. His day job is driving a semi for WCW production. Does this photo encapsulate the madness of WCW in the last 18 to 24 months of its life? Think about that. That picture speaks volumes. Are you?
I'm not throwing shade, but this is Russo 101, is it not?
Are you tearing up over there? Well, now didn't Ralphus like break in?
Well, I don't mean Ralphus necessarily.
Oh,
I get that was a Jericho idea, and I'm all for it. I'm more specifically talking about Terry Funk being on all fours.
What? Okay, Jericho got him in as a roadie. That all makes sense. But the Arquette winning the title, the Ralph is actually in a match in a 3-way. It's, what'd you say? That's a bridge too far.
2 stars.
Stars too. Come on.
Yeah. This, yeah. Hey, I do want to ask you,
Good
listen, we both think whatever we think about hardcore wrestling. But which of the 2 promotions, I'm not talking about ECW, between the WWF's hardcore division, where we saw the title change about 12 times a month, and then this version of the WCW hardcore division, who do you think handled the hardcore division best between WWF and WCW, in your opinion, as a performer?
Oh, dear Lord. You just kind of said it. The radical title switching kind of maybe wasn't the best out. I think if you were to ask me, name the word association with WWE hardcore division, I would say overproduced. But because they looked at everything for it, they want to enhance everything. I get it. I'm all for that, getting camera shots and timing and everything. But it felt a little bit too methodical. And WCW, I think, so much wasted and just hodgepodge booking and really nonsensical. So I'm going to have to lean into WWF's version.
Let's talk about the next match. We've got Shawn Stasiac pinning Kurt Hennig in 7 minutes and 54 seconds. Meltzer would say the crowd's really into everything that Kurt does on offense, and he says that Stasiak's moves aren't bad, but he's totally mechanical and has the personality of a tree while doing them. He gives it 1 star. Listen, you've seen a ton of talent. We know that Shawn is a legacy talent. He did experience somewhat of a glass ceiling in wrestling. Why don't you think he enjoyed more success? What, if anything, was Shawn missing from his game that could have allowed him to level up, if that makes sense?
I do want to note out that Shawn Stasiac, son of a former world heavyweight champion, 2nd generation, Kurt Hennig, 2nd generation, got 1 star, and Ralph has got 2 stars. So there's your star rating system for today, the madness of it. But I think Shawn was a guy that never found who he was as a talent. And I don't think it's all Shawn's fault. I don't think it's all the promoter's fault. I think I'm going to go back to just fitting into the DNA of a card, of a promotion, is not the easiest thing in the world. And I think you got to kind of split. I don't know if blame's the right word, but who was Shawn? Tell me about him. Shawn, you tell me who you are as a performer. And I think sometimes that gets lost on what I was talking about a little while ago. We're a little bit Hollywood, a little bit TV show, a little bit vaudeville, Broadway, athletics, a little politics, a little smack talking, all in a one. But coming out of that, you got to create characters at the very foundation. Who was Shawn Stasiac? And I think that was his roadblock to getting to, if we call it, the next level.
Since we're talking about what could have been, I do want to circle back to Norman Smiley. I mean, Norman Smiley was this great international journeyman wrestler, not to be disrespectful, because I know this is said a lot of times disrespectfully, but almost everyone would say he was a good hand, meaning he's very capable. He knows what he's doing. He has authenticity, he has believability, he has credibility. I mean, he's done it all in pro wrestling, and he was quite successful in Mexico and lots of other different territories around the world. But it does feel like he enjoyed his most mainstream success as more of a comedic presentation here in WCW. And I do think, for whatever reason, a lot of times when you get put into the comedic role, you almost kind of get typecast as that. I imagine that had he lived, James Gandolfini would have forever been thought of first for mafioso type roles, and it would have become more challenging for him to tackle other roles, because when the audience has identified you a certain way, they kind of want more of that. So it's in the business interest to super serve that fan base. In an alternate universe, do you think Norman Smiley could have enjoyed more success without the comedy, or was that necessary at that point in his career, do you think?
And I think where you, I guess, got to drill down to it is that Norman learned to play to his strengths. A hell of a worker, still to this day, he's a teacher, but to be successful on American television. And when I look through, on this pay-per-view, this is a pay-per-view, not just TV matches. The pay-per-view matches are short. That especially doing, we'll call it the shock TV of 3 to 4 to 5 minute TV matches, like really quick. Both brands were doing that Norman kind of took his lane and went with it. So Norman's a smart guy. He knew how to take care of himself. Never going to be the greatest promo in the world. The wiggle served him well through the years, and I think he knew that better than anybody.
Let's talk about the next match. Your great close personal friend, Scott Steiner, is going to be Captain Hugh G. Rection. We know him as Bill DeMott, the former Hugh Morris. Scott's going to retain his U.S. title in 9 minutes and 24 seconds. And the former Hugh Morris came out and said that Hugh Morris was a brain fart from Eric Bischoff, and his real name is Hugh G. Rection. He's going to go by Captain Rection, which Meltzer says it will at some point become Captain Rectum. It gets 2 1/4 stars. Booker T is going to come out and clean house on Steiner after the MIA are going to try to get involved. So it's a pull apart. It's a smudge. But listen, we had a cat fight in match number 1. And then we had, Terry Funk and the Big Wiggle and Ralphus in match number 2. And now we've got Captain Hugh G. Rection in match number 4. This is a lot, Jeff.
No kidding. I lived it, pal. You were sitting on your couch.
I wasn't watching this. I missed this.
That's right. You were in Huntsville and all kind of shenanigans. I've heard Cassio.
No, not that.
In the year 2000.
This was a pay-per-view, and I was a bootstrapping entrepreneur even in 2000, and I wasn't wasting $30 on this.
You were up to no good in year 2000. Don't tell me no different. I've got a personal hotline to Miss Deborah, and she had a good Mother's Day, and I know in 2000 you were up to no good. What was I doing? I was watching Norman Smiley do the freaking wiggle.
This would have been a great time, by the way, between the Big Wiggle and Captain Hugh G. Rection to plug BlueChew, but we've already done it. So just use the promo code MyWorld, and I promise you'll have better results than Bill DeMott did with this gimmick.
Hugh G.
Hugh G. Rection.
No, it's Hugh G.
It's Hugh G. Rection. That's his last name's Rection.
Captain Rection.
Yeah.
Hugh G. Rection.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Just what? Slamboree 2000, 25 years in the making. Next thing you're going to know, you're going to have Kid Romeo put a cape and crown on. Well, go on. Keep talking.
Let's talk about the silliness that's next. And I loved it as a fan because I loved Mike Awesome and I loved Canyon. And they go to a no contest. They get 12 minutes and 11 seconds. And Meltzer would say this is the best match on the show. But it's hurt because there's a fight in the stands and it really takes away from the crowd. And you and I have never really talked about that, but I do want to ask you about that now. You've seen it all and done it all in pro wrestling. When you're in the ring, sweating your ass off, bumping your ass off, taking these bumps, dealing with the pain, trying to think about what's next, trying to listen to the crowd, engage what to give them more of and what to give them less of. And all of a sudden they're just quiet. And you can't figure out why. And you glance out and you see, hell, they're not even looking at us. What goes through your mind in the ring as a performer in that moment? How do you get them back? How do you get engaged? Is it a demotivator for you in the ring to realize I'm doing all this and they're not even watching?
Now, look, gosh, Conrad, what's crazy is I think I shared this. Next year will be my 40th year. But so I'll say 86 to 93 before we had to, we'll call it non-televised, but just if you're working a show, and this used to happen so often, Louisville would have their share of fights on Tuesday night. I mean, Nashville, certainly there would be fights and cops got to get on the scene and pull them apart and throw somebody out. And it's a whole scene. And, the amount of times that has happened in my career, too many to count. And in a non-televised set of circumstances is, and I remember, God, whoever it would be, he'll just ground you and just take your ass to the mat and grab a hold, and you've got to do a reset, like a complete reset, because it is, depending upon size of the building, but certainly the fight that took place in that area, it is people jumping over chairs. Depends on how big the fight is, how big the commotion, but it's literally, quote unquote, a showstopper. The show can really be, come to a screeching halt. But if you're doing a TV show, now pay-per-view is a little easier because you got a little time, but you've got to let that moment breathe as performers. And if you try to continue your match in a like that isn't going on over there, it's like reading a book, Conrad, and you get to the bottom of a page, and when you turn the page, if your mind starts wandering and you're still kind of reading, and you do 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, and then you try to pick back up and you do this, shit, what did I just read? Well, I got to go back. Well, you can't do that because that's the real reality of trying to tell a story in the ring. And if you're not telling the story and the people, you try to continue the story and the people aren't watching, you go from bad to worse. But it is a real challenge when fights take place. It just is. Lawler is probably the one who taught me that lesson best because, he's in the main event and whatever it may be. And the people in certain arenas have had plenty of adult beverages. So by the time the main event gets going, almost right before bell time, and you would really see fights break out at the beginning of a match, of a main event match, because they're coming back from the concession stand and this guy's mouthing here and this guy's mouthing there. Like I said, maybe some adult beverages. So if a fight happens early, you just kind of let it happen and then get on with your story. When it happens during a TV match, that is a real challenge. It's almost like, all right, let's get it going. Get the segment over because you've lost them. The people in the arena, you've really lost them and you can't get them back.
They're pulling out all the stops here. Mike Awesome is going to pull the mats up and tease that he's going to powerbomb Canyon on the floor like Vader did to Cactus Jack once before. But Canyon gets away. Awesome hits a release German suplex. They get up on the ramp, and he's getting ready to powerbomb Canyon off the ramp. But here comes Kevin Nash to interfere. And then Billy Kidman, Vampiro, Shane Douglas, Chris Candido, Ric Flair, and Sting. It's all the big brawl, and it's a non-finish. It gets 3.25 stars because of this non-finish. I do want to ask you 2 points about this, though. In your opinion, was Mike Awesome reckless?
No.
Because that was the narrative that we started to hear as fans in 2000 that, he's taking liberties with guys, and he's hurting guys, and he's not safe. And I never heard that before, but we heard it in WCW. Is this just people crying to grout, people with sour grapes, I guess?
Yeah. Well, and Mike, what was he, 6'4"? I mean, Mike was a big guy.
Yeah.
And athletic and aggressive. And, whether it was in today's generation or years past or years way before my time, you're always going to have different versions of guys that often forget what they signed up for. I'll just say that diplomatically, like, dude, this is not ballet. You're going to get roughed up. That's just the nature of the beast.
We should spend a little bit of time talking about Canyon too. I think a lot of people consider Canyon maybe the unsung hero of 2000 WCW, arguably the MVP, because it does feel like if you need to get a guy over, if you need a big stunt, if you need to showcase someone, Canyon was there for you to call on, and he consistently delivered. Do you think Canyon is maybe one of the unsung heroes of WCW in 2000?
Yeah, and I always, since the day I don't say day I met Chris, but when it was really around him and understood how damn good he was in the ring, he could really, I think, as a heel, he could do his work, his opponent's work, and he was creative and giving toward the business. He's really good. But to me, and this is something, coming from, I'll call it from the territory teaching, in that, hey, not everybody's going to be a main eventer. Not everybody has the gift of gab. Not everybody has the unique charisma that makes them a box office attraction. But it takes a unit. It takes a complete team. And if you don't have that guy that is truly the glue, that everything else falls apart. He's one of the ones. And, you look at Lawler's early in his career. I just saw a picture that popped in my brain. In 1973, he beat him and Jim White beat my dad in Fargo for the tag titles or something like that. But I saw the picture of Sam Bass, Jerry Lawler, and Jim White. And Lawler has often told me stories about that's how he became the real red hot heel, that Jim was the bump taker or took the fall when needed. Jim would get bumped and Jerry Lawler could come in and cold cock the guy from behind to get the heat. Sam Bass was a good enough talker, but they positioned Jerry, even in those early days, as the star, as the guy that carried all the weight, and at the time he was great, but he wasn't anything where he became. And that's where, just being I hate to say the role player, but in a lot of ways, you look at championship teams, and without the role players, then you never win championships. And that, to me, that's where you can lean into Canyon. MVP, that may be a stretch, but he's right up there of being, when you kind of look, as crazy as things sound, when Chris was on the card, you better believe it's not the best match, right up there at the top. And that, as a producer, good God, that's got value, like crazy kind of value. When you know that this guy's going to do his work and his opponents as well.
Next up, we've got Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell. They go 9 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a Lex Luger Buff Bagwell match, so Dave didn't like it. He gave it 1 star, and Meltzer would say this was the first time ever where Luger, who turns 42 next month, actually looked old in the ring. I don't mean old as in his match was bad, because his matches have been bad forever, but facially and even his body looked like an aging bodybuilder as opposed to a bodybuilder. It's the unavoidable reality, but it hit me hard nonetheless, because Luger has always looked younger than he was. Backstage, Liz hit Vince Russo with the bat and ran to ringside, and as she ran out, she hit Buff. Got Buff the bat, and then he hit Luger twice in the ribs and delivered a neck breaker. Liz gets the bat and hits Bagwell with a very weak shot, and then Luger puts him in the rack for the finish. But after the match, Chuck Palumbo, just back from New Japan, comes out wearing the same style boots and trunks as Luger for his gimmick as the new total package. He joined with Bagwell, doubling on Luger, and put him in the rack while Bagwell grabbed Liz and carried her backstage. What do you think of this new total package gimmick? I mean, just putting the word new in front of something is almost the kiss of death in wrestling, is it not?
Well, and you can kind of see where creative's going with this. And look, the lack of leadership and the lack or the reality of that the business was run corporately. And I hate to harp on the guaranteed deals, but that wasn't the issue. I'll say the lack of incentive to really, and that goes with leadership, but by design, it was just a mess across the board. But creative was like, okay, the Millionaires Club, if you will, none of them were happy to be there. They loved the check, loved to pick it up, but it was just rowing the boat was really hard. Nobody was rowing in the same direction. And so, I get trying to give Palumbo a rub and all that, but making him a knockoff of Lex, it puts Lex over much more than it puts Palumbo over. But that's a philosophical difference that it's obvious me and Vince would look at something and we disagreed on that, and I think there's a lot of people that can have different opinions, but making you the new total package, that puts Lex over much more. It doesn't put heat on Palumbo, but that's a philosophical point of view.
Let's talk about the next match. Once upon a time, this would have been considered a dream match, and it could have headlined a major ECW pay-per-view. And in an alternate universe, it did. But we did get it here in 2000 in WCW. I'm talking about Shane Douglas and Ric Flair. Shane Douglas had made a living calling out Ric Flair in ECW for years, so it was exciting to finally see it happen. But if you're watching along with us at myworldpod.com, you see how ridiculous Ric Flair looks. Not in the confines of every day. I mean, hey, he's looking pretty sharp. But in the confines of a wrestling ring, he's not wearing boots and trunks and knee pads. He's wearing loafers and slacks and a dress t-shirt. And Meltzer would say, Flair shouldn't wrestle with his shirt off, but he looked ridiculous in the dress pants and shirt. Trunks and a tank top or a t-shirt would be far more effective. Flair only wrestling on special occasions when it has meaning would be even better. Of course, we know Flair still got 8 years in front of him before he'll have his last match with the WWE. And then, of course, he'd come back and wrestle for TNA. And I guess the rumor is he wrestled a few years ago in Nashville, but I don't know that to be true.
It's true.
The whole issue of Rick wrestling with a shirt on, what do you think would have worked best? I mean, I know what we got what we saw, but if you were involved in that creative process, would you have said, "Hey, Rick, what if?" Finish that sentence for me.
Exactly the way he was dressed at Ric Flair's last match.
Yeah.
It was so disheartening to me as a fan, as a coworker, and I wasn't an executive producer there, but someone that I tried to look at the product always through multiple lenses, but looking at it through a TBS TNT primetime show, that of all people is what I would told Rick back then. Out of all people, you've got to look like a wrestler, period. You are the multi-time world heavyweight champion, the flag bearer. I mean, go on and on and on. Rick, of all people, you've got to look the part. And when you look like, an accountant or a lawyer or headed out to dinner from the neck down, it's not jiving, it's not connecting. I really thought, Rick's Teflon in so many ways, but I just thought it was such a disservice to, quote unquote, the Nature Boy.
We should mention a mask guy in a Sting mask comes out and he hits Flair with a bat and Douglas cradles him. Since the announcers are screaming it was Russo when it clearly wasn't, I guess it's no surprise that Flair is also screaming for Russo to come back in the ring. And then the real Russo came back out. And it turns out that the guy under the mask was David Flair, while the announcers were acting shocked at the turn of a son turning on his father. But we saw it the prior year, so it's no longer a shock. But either way, David Flair and Russo would pound on Rick until Nash comes out. He throws one knee and David plays dead. Daphne's going to hit Nash with a low blow, and then Russo destroys Nash with the bat. Later in the show, of course, Nash is backstage fine. Man, we can't have just a regular wrestling match with a finish. It's not allowed. It might be illegal here at Slamboree 2000.
As we've gone through the matches, Conrad, has there been one that in some point in the match, in the comments, in the review, that we didn't just completely roll our eyes? No.
Yeah. And listen, we're going to keep going because there is another match that I think in a different set of circumstances could have been and maybe should have been a main event. Imagine if WCW would have done a big pay-per-view or a big Nitro or what have you in Mexico, and they had Sting main event against Vampiro. That's match number 8 here at Slamboree. It goes just under 7 minutes. It's written here. Sting worked really hard, even doing a plancha over the post, but he still doesn't sell much for Vampiro, even when Vampiro hits him with a lead pipe. Sting's going to get the pipe and deliver a Stinger splash with it, and then hit 2 reverse DDTs for the pin, 2.5 stars. I don't know why, but anytime there's a pipe involved, and it did feel like that became a staple in WCW in 2000, it almost reminds me of that board game we all played as kids, Clue. It's like Colonel Mustard in the library with a pipe. This is just not great here, but this could be more. I mean, Sting and Vampiro, I think with the proper marketing and proper story and proper time, man, imagine if they'd have done that in Mexico or for that matter, even LA with the heavy Hispanic influence that maybe grew up watching Vampiro. This could have been big business, and here it just kind of feels lost in the shuffle. What say you?
Bingo, lost in the shuffle. When you're like packages and really dedicating the story, and I'm not going to try to get in reverse, but the story that could have been told that was authentic between Shane and Rick, big time. I mean, you could have really layer upon layer upon layer. To me, missed opportunity. Just what you said, Sting and Vamp and, Perfect World, yes, in Mexico, but just kind of the backstory of, and I know the announcers did their best and they had all kind of announcer notes, but if you really look at Sting, I mean, Vampiro, we'll call him the Sting of Mexico. He could, I mean, there's again, layer upon layer, but watching this as a viewer, you didn't get that sense at all. And it's not any one person's fault. It was the culture that had been, the culture had evolved through this once things start headed south. I'll just say that I mean, the snowball really picked up on these when we're taking out these isolated matches or incidences. Nothing meant nothing.
We should mention that it still means something when you're talking about our next main event. I guess it's not really a main event, but maybe it could have been on TV. We get it as the 9th match here on pay-per-view at Slamboree 2000. It's Hulk Hogan pinning Billy Kidman in 13:31. Eric Bischoff is the referee. Horace Hogan is going to come out with his uncle, the Hulkster. And Meltzer would say both worked hard. And if you just accept that Hogan's offense looks terrible and he doesn't take bumps, well, then it was good. But if you judge Hogan by the standards of a preliminary wrestler, it isn't quite so good. Hogan did take his first Hurricane Rana of his career, which was actually more impressive than the pre-sawed table spots or all the blade jobs. As you imagine, there's a comedy of errors with Hogan and the tables. One of the tables is already broken and useless. Kidman's going to hit Hogan with a couple of weak chair shots. Hogan's going to start bleeding. Bischoff's going to hold Hogan for another chair shot, but of course Hogan ducks. Hogan then powerbombs Bischoff through a table that was functioning. A table seemed to magically appear at ringside, and Hogan had a hell of a time getting it under the ropes. Kidman gives him a low blow, and he puts Hogan on the table. But Hogan moves, and Kidman splashes through the table. Horace Hogan runs out and grabs the now unconscious Eric Bischoff's hands and counts to 3 with it. 2.5 stars. This is a story that's brought up a lot to sort of highlight that, you know, all the narrative about vanilla midgets and things like that. Hogan was a good guy. Hogan worked a program with Billy Kidman, yada, yada, yada. It does feel like it was born out of a media interview where Kidman caught what the kids would call these days a stray from Hulk Hogan, where he's talking about the star power and that, you know, wrestling fans want to see the big stars like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Sting and Kevin Nash and Goldberg. And then some sort of defamatory reference to Billy Kidman. So I appreciate that we turned a real life interview into a storyline. But this was always going to be oil and water, Hogan and Kidman, was it not?
Well, and look, if you go back and watch this match, I remember actually watching parts of it live, which is bizarre. But I watched. I think back then I watched for whatever reason I've seen this. In and of itself, Hogan and tables. That's not his style. He's, you know, punch, Hulk up, drop the leg. That's what brought him to the dance. You know, even the NWO style, he would spray paint and talk stuff and have multiple run-ins and all this. But man, in a one-on-one match with a cruiserweight, if you will, Hogan came with his working boots on. It's like when you see Hulk back in the day in Japan, you go, damn, that guy can, like, Hogan's effort was there. So I do commend him for that during this time. But oil and water doesn't even do it justice. Kidman is not a tables guy. He's a luchador. So it feels like, okay, let's sit down as a producer and get both guys out of their element. And oh yeah, that's a great idea for a match. It's like either work a Hogan style match or a Kidman style match with Hogan's limitations. Why are we going to special referee and tables and Horace involved? It just, to me, but it was typical WCW of this time in a lot of ways.
Well, something else that's typical is that we're helping people save money at SaveWithConrad.com. And with all the economic turmoil going on the last few weeks and all the uncertainty it brings, here's one thing that is certain. Your home is still worth more than what you paid for it. According to the Zillow Home Value Index, the value of your home is still going up year over year, which means you're most likely sitting on untapped equity. Did you purchase your home or refinance it a few years back and got one of those really low COVID interest rates, and now maybe you're worried about giving it up? Well, here's something to think about. While the interest on your mortgage payment is low, the interest you're paying on your credit card balances is most likely wiping out those savings and then some. So what's more important, clinging on to that low rate or saving money each month? Let's talk about using the equity you've built up in your home and rolling all that debt into one lower monthly payment. Someone who just did that was our man Andrew, a maintenance worker in Tennessee. He needed to pay off some debt and he needed to get a new roof and some new floors for his home. So instead of taking out more debt to do these upgrades, he came to SaveWithConrad.com to use the equity he's built up in his home and do a refinance. SaveWithConrad.com helped him accomplish all of those upgrades he wanted on his home. He paid off his debt, and now he's saving over $400 a month. He even got to skip his next 2 house payments. And you can do it too. Go right now to SaveWithConrad.com and let my team run the numbers for you for free. There's no cost and no obligation. And if we can't help you save some money today, we won't waste your time. It doesn't cost a thing to look, and you've got nothing to lose except some crazy high interest rates on those credit cards. You know you can do better. Start saving money today for your family with my family at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. Jeff, we got to talk about the main event. We're finally here.
Let's do it.
And this is a big deal. It's for the most prestigious championship in the history of professional wrestling, the WCW, the former NWA heavyweight title, and you're going to win it in a 3-way dance over David Arquette and Dallas Page. And I know when you were a little kid and you were dreaming about being a pro wrestling star, you had aspirations to one day make this a full-time living. And boy, it'd be cool if you could make a bunch of money doing so. And man, the real cherry on top would be if I could be the world champion. And if only I could beat a movie star for it. That's probably exactly how you drew it up, right?
It was 60 feet in the air.
Yes.
You're leaving out just, and when no 1, 2, 3.
Tell me how you remember hearing this creative and what your reaction was when you first heard it.
Now, I'll say this. Let's go back to a 2-shot, Dave, just because I think the context of all this really helps. And Conrad will do a better job. Can you explain how Ready to Rumble is the setup for using Arquette and the cage? Because he was in the movie and a movie came out. I'll shut up because I think it's important.
So the parent company had decided we were going to partner to make a wrestling movie, which makes sense, especially when you consider all the success that wrestling had enjoyed in the mainstream conversation going back to 98 and 99. Well, of course, as with everything else, Hollywood's going to try to capitalize on what's hot. And pro wrestling is hot at the time of this movie pitch and at the time of the movie filming and the scripting and all that. Now that they're actually ready to release the doggone thing, WCW is not quite what it was. So we are going to try to do whatever we can on the WCW side of things to promote and feature some of the talent that are involved in this. And we can, quote unquote, get the rub, the Hollywood rub, from the inclusion of some of these iconic characters and situations. Of course, the main character in the movie is David Arquette. And there is a big piece of the story in the movie that involves the use of a triple cage, the same one that we saw once before with World Class inside of Texas Stadium. We also saw it at a Great American Bash for Jim Crockett Promotions. And yes, there was even a silly triple cage at an Uncensored about 4 or 5 years prior to this. But now we're going to dust it off. But we're also in the era of Shane McMahon, for lack of a better word, jumping off shit and these fantastic stunts. I mean, on ECW, people are conditioned, hey, New Jack's going to come out, they're going to blare rap music, and somebody's going to get their ass whooped to a soundtrack, maybe take a bowling ball to the gonads or a vacuum cleaner over the head. But at some point, New Jack's going to jump off the balcony and put somebody through a table. So these stunts are kind of in fashion. So I think the creative, the powers that be, if you will, would say, hey, let's find a way to kill 2 birds with a few stones. We can have Diamond Dallas Page further his divorce storyline and have a reason for a comeback. We can have Jeff Jarrett positioned to be the chosen one, if you will, and really cement him as a heel character. And we can utilize the Hollywood celebrity and also reference the triple cage that's used in the movie. And what if we could do all of that, but also involve a classic, silly, maybe over the top stunt that we had seen for a lot of different shows. I mean, famously, Mick Foley comes off the cage, Rikishi comes off the cage. So fans are conditioned to hope for one of these. And maybe there's almost an expectation that if you're going to have a big cage like this, we need somebody to come off of that thing. So we asked guys who were trained to be a professional wrestler to now do a stunt, one that they've never probably been trained for, and one that we're certainly not really ready for. And we're just going to cross our fingers and hope for the best live on pay-per-view in front of a quarter full arena where we gave away half the tickets. I'll tag you back in.
Excellent. And Canyon played a major role in the stunt coordinator of the wrestling part of the movie. So Ready to Rumble was the theme. I completely understand that. Arquette, DDP. It was, there was a bunch of us. Eric, we did the premiere at whatever that famous theater is out in Hollywood. And so Ready to Rumble was a big corporate initiative. And so, okay, so now timing everything up. All right, so this triple cage, all right, we got to make this work. And so Slamboree, the May pay-per-view, it was chosen to pick that, all that. So that was kind of all the layers of, I guess you could say, just getting into why is this triple cage. So now we got to backstory it and try to get this to make sense. And Arquette, and we've already gone through making him the champion out of a tag match. And there was a double pin and Shivani speaking up, hey, why don't we switch the title? Just all the kind of stuff that went through to this arrival. But Conrad, I'll say all the, we'll call it creative nonsense and trying to make sense and do patch jobs, just trying to get there. But once we got to the pay-per-view, Conrad, I can truthfully tell you, me and Dallas had good chemistry. I knew that he wanted to come to the show with his working boots on. I knew I wanted to. It was not lost on me the May pay-per-view mindset that just a year prior. It was all very, very unique to me, Conrad. Just knowing the Owen situation, I didn't know it at the time, but just how much I had stuffed that and repressed that. And, don't look in the rearview mirror, just look forward. I did a lot of peak performance work on that, Conrad, with my guy and lasered in because I took this very serious, and I really did. I wanted I knew, I'll just say this. I knew without, and Dallas did too. I'm not going to just put it on me. We both knew we are closing this show with a triple cage, and we have an actor in here. There is a very, very good chance that this can be a cluster and be a disaster and not come away with the right reaction. And Conrad, candidly, we're ending a pay-per-view with a heel finish, with the actor being the vital part of it. That is a tall, tall, tall task. So, again, Dallas, his efforts, I think my efforts, I think everybody's efforts, we came prepared. We were out there. I think I flew in on Friday night and all day Saturday at the building because we cared about it immensely, and we wanted to do the very best we could. And I think, what's the note say? I think we went 16, 17 minutes, and entrances probably add 4, 5, 6 on top of that. And you had the big Canyon bump, which we had to work him in. And I don't know if that was a Dallas request or a Canyon request or a Bischoff or a movie or whatever it was. I just remember going, man, it's really going to be hard to follow this because the guy's falling and falling off and through the stage, which we had the ramp at that time. You didn't walk on the ground getting to the ring. It was one of those 4 6-foot ramps. So that had to be put in there, and then we had to get the attention back on us. There was a lot in this. But that being said, to this day, I'm very proud of me and Dallas's efforts to put on the very best match we could. And it was in the arena. Look, was it perfect? No. But to me, my first litmus test was, if you were there live, did the people see an effort and know that we worked our ass off for them? And I would say commanding, yes. Was it perfect? No.
The finish does repeat the exact same finish from the prior WCW pay-per-view and even the finish from WrestleMania.
Good God.
I mean, so there is creative fatigue when it comes to the finish, but I understand that your hand is somewhat forced because you do have an actor. And whereas some people would be critical of DDP wanting to sort of lay everything out beat for beat, word for word. I mean, I know guys have sort of poked fun at Dallas over the years because he didn't do things the old way. It's interesting because now everyone scripts everything. Not everyone, but it is more common now. But that was almost a benefit when you're going to be working with an actor like this with David Arquette. I mean, this is a guy who, respectfully, he's used to working from a script. He's used to, you do this, then I do that. I mean, that sort of checks every box for David Arquette, does it not?
Well, and the challenge of a triple cage, and they wanted some folks involved, and us getting out there. And here's a little footnote that I always like when I recount this is that, there's the ground level with the ring, and then going up, we'll call that the second level, and the third level is the top. On the second level, you have to come through that hole to get into it. And then we would fight around, and we did a spot within that cage where to get up to that and all this. And it was dramatic. But on that Saturday, about midday, as we were going through it, Dallas, we're walking through it, and I was listening to him, but I wasn't right beside him. There was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys up top, and production was still there, and they were reinforcing different things. And we were talking about, how the cage was going to break and bust and the potential here and potential there. Dallas backed up, and one of his legs dropped down through the hole. And when he did, Conrad, it was a scary moment, but the look on his face, how his body contorted, he's just like, oh shit. He hurt himself. And at the time it was like, oh man, this ain't good. This ain't good. But kind of our walkthrough was over, and we had done for the most part. He ended up flying his doctor in, but that being hurt and how he rehabilitated himself through this process was really the genesis for DDP yoga, which I to this day do every morning, a nice little 14-minute stretching. But it's funny, the different things. And here we are 25 years later talking about it. But to back to your kind of comment in that, when you're shooting a TV show, you better have things. And me and Dallas, when you go back and watch it, there were certain things that were absolute complete ad lib. But that's kind of, to me, when you can get in there and have a very good structure, but as things come and go, and it makes everything that much better.
No other way to talk about this. This is the second time you're back in Kemper Arena after Owen passed away. You were back there in August the year prior with WWE, but here you are really near the 1-year anniversary of Owen's fall, and you find yourself not exactly in the rafters, but really high up there. Is that just all consuming your thoughts that day?
So when I found out we were doing it, I want to say it's a little over a month, but if you've never heard of peak performance, there's a tapping, there's a couple of different things, visualization, but I went to 2 different guys that specialized in that. I don't know if I even told you about that, Conrad, but I'm going to say, am I a fan of heights? Oh, I don't jump up and down, but I was always just cautious. I mean, as we all, I'm listening to old man. Hey, dude, shit can happen up there. But I guess saying, being very conscientious of myself, opponents, refs, everything that went with it. I wanted to be super dialed in, and as a part of that, knowing that here we are, and this is where it's just the convergence of it all. A year prior to this is when the tragic accident happened. So going into this match, Conrad, I was, top 5, maybe top 3 of my career. I did more work outside of just me thinking through it than maybe I've ever done. And it was about the peak performance because I really wanted to be dialed in because of the cage, the heights, the Owen, everything that went with it. And yeah, I mean, it was not lost on me. Trust me. But the grieving process, that was obviously not a part of it, but the recognition of it was.
Do you remember Owen's birthday?
Owen's birthday is May. His
May 7th,
yeah,
the day of this pay-per-view.
yeah.
It's just hard for me to imagine you walking around in the arena where he passed away.
On
Here
his
you are less than a year later in the same place where you walked around and felt those broken boards beneath your feet. And now you're standing nearly in the rafters on top of this cage on Owen's birthday. And Canyon's going to go sailing off the cage and fall through what fans thought were boards for the ramp. We know that it was a crash pad and cardboard boxes to break the fall. But how could you not think about Owen in that moment?
Oh, no doubt. And, I remember asking the lead rigger, if you will, hey, how high is that up there? And he's like, Jeff, I want to say with this. He said, I think to the top of the cage, he's like 62 feet, 60, something like that. I'm just like, oh boy, is that right? And then I think it was, I later heard, anyway, I just remember 40, what was it? 40, but Owen was 80. I just remember thinking in the stratosphere of like, wow, I'm way up there. They put that last shot up that it's they hung a camera like,
you're way up there,
buddy.
It has to cross your mind. And listen, we're not trying to beat up on it, but here we are trying to sell the emotion. I mean, we're being paid to have this performance and we're supposed to be excited that we've won the world title. And to be clear, this isn't the first time you've been the WCW champion. You won it 3 weeks prior to this at Spring Stampede in a tournament, last beating DDP. So you've worked your ass off to finally be, for all intents and purposes, the NWA world champion. And you've got it. This is the belt that, if he grew up in Memphis, eluded Lawler, a guy you looked up to his entire career. And now you've got it. And you're standing high atop the arena where your best buddy passed away doing a similar stunt on your best buddy's birth. Like, this has got to be the most mixed emotions moment for any wrestler in wrestling history, I think.
When you put it like that, look, my appreciation for my career grows every day. I'll just say that, because this is May of 2000. Let's go back to, I don't know how far back, but a little over a year. Well, a year. The last year, from May of 99, Owen's accident, to May of 2000. Crazy. Because I would have never in my wildest dreams ever in May of 99 ever thought I would have gone back to WCW. Like, if you would have asked me what are the odds of you going back to WCW, I would have said less than 5%. I mean, I would have honestly said that, because I'd, gone back and gone through we'll call it the in-ring and the Austin situation and the Double J situation and Tennessee Lee, and got a little footing and then cut the hair, and Patterson styled into that. And I could tell Vince gravitated toward that. It's okay. Now we're getting footing. So it was just like, okay, now my trajectory is certainly headed up. What am I at this age? I am 20, whatever. No, I'm 30. 32, 33, if you will. Conrad, I was truly in my mind headed for we'll call it a long WWF career. And a year later, the changes that had taken place in my life, the loss of Owen, we'll call it the China storyline, the unexpectedly, nope, this is what we're offering you as a paycheck. Oh, okay. WCW's interested. Get there. Knew that it wasn't going to be perfect, but we've talked about this multiple times on the pod. Just what I had left in 96 and 97 was some craziness, but nobody could. You have to have lived that as a talent, the disorganization and candidly, the kind of pointing fingers and just the complete mess of it. And then here we are in May. And just like you said, here we are in the same arena and I'm the champion.
With a sick wife at home and a young family to boot.
Crazy.
And you're trying to balance all that in your early 30s. Nobody's got a story like Double J. A week after this pay-per-view, the Torchwood Report, Brad Siegel told Multi-Channel News that no consideration is being given to shutting down or selling WCW. This is right around the same time that USA Network would ask for discovery in their lawsuit against the WWF and Viacom about a potential WWF purchase of WCW. It's right before Stu Snyder starts with the WWF, and it's also around the same time when Kevin Sullivan was told there was a drop-dead date for WCW. Did you think here in May of 2000 that there was any chance WCW would get sold to the WWF?
Zero. I mean, and this is what is so lost on so many folks. The top rated programs on TNT and TBS, maybe not number one, but they were always at the tip top, was Nitro and Thunder. And the ability to we'll call it in any wrestling promotion. Okay, man, we're just like that analogy you gave earlier. Okay, we're used to making $1 million. Okay, we need to cut cost. Okay, guys, you're corporately run. The corporate folks come in, slash cost, get the damn books right. Run this business like you should for your shareholders. Now, look, we're 25 years after, and the different stories that come out and the knowledge we have now, and that, every time Ted lost a little bit of power, wrestling got another black eye and another black eye and another black eye. But Conrad, I wasn't privy to really any of that. And so, no, now what we know, and Stu Snyder and the sale and the victory and all that kind of stuff. But for old Double J in May of 2000, I would have said, yep, Siegel's, he's right. Now we know he's full of shit.
Well, boys and girls, we're not done. We're going to be back next week, and we're going to be having a lot of fun talking about all things wrestling, specifically as we take a look to next week. And I'm pretty fired up about this one. We're going to be talking about Hard Justice 2005.
Yep.
It's an interesting time in my TNA fandom. It's an interesting time in TNA. But speaking of interesting times, this Wednesday, AEW is going to be doing Dynamite, and I believe they might be taping a Collision special featuring a tribute to the late, great Steve Mongo McMichael. And there's a little birdie out there who says that it may be a star-studded affair, and we may or may not be live immediately following Dynamite. So if you have missed out on some of our live reaction shows from Dynamite, you've been missing out. They're brief. We're going to be 20, 30 minutes tops, but we're going to be taking your questions live. And we've done one of these backstage from the arena. Since this is a double taping, I have a feeling that we might be doing that here. And think about how rare that is, that you get a live, non-sanctioned feed backstage at a wrestling event in the middle of a television taping. Where else can you see or hear about that? Join us live and talk to Double J live backstage
And
following Dynamite. Yes, and friends. Listen, we've had a ton of run-ins on this thing. We've had the Queen, and I don't even want to say too much about what she said. I don't want to get us canceled here, but let's just say she ain't got no front brakes, and it makes for incredible viewing. I sometimes don't even want to talk. I just want to click record and let her go. I think she scared Jay Lethal off of this idea for good. It's available in the archives at myworldpod.com. It is going to be something you don't want to miss. And if the wrestling newsletters get a hold of this, well, it'll be canceled sooner rather than later. It might be the most newsworthy piece of video that ever happens live in wrestling. And it's happening again this Wednesday night at myworldpod.com. That's myworldpod.com. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell, and we'll see you as you're listening to this tomorrow night, immediately following AEW Dynamite. And next week, it's All Things Hard Justice 2005 right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.